10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
Liftoff and the clock is Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And as we laugh at their latest video on YouTube, it's time now for Kerbalcast, episode 70.
Episode 70?
One giant leap for mankind.
And as we laugh at their latest video on YouTube, it's time now for Kerbalcast, episode 70, A Walk in the Space Park.
Kerbal Space Program was supposed to be a way for dumb people to feel like rocket scientists, but then I got here, and I'm still too dumb for the dumb fake version.
I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, and with me as always, our CMP, Command Module Pilot
Nostromo.
Coming up in today's program, Biff goes a-roving, and Nos gets all lined up. It's our progress in the game.
Caffeine Rage has the latest on 1.0.5.
Jim and Zip are back with more mulchy goodness.
Freetoss has the third episode of Solar System Science.
And Northstar in the Temple of Heavy Lift Vehicles.
And Kerbal 101 with J. Arthur. Before
we go any further, I want to acknowledge the opening soundbite that we used on today's episode.
Yeah.
White Lightning HQ has done another Kerbal video, and it is absolutely hilarious.
It's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I got the sound from. Because at one point he goes off into this rant about, this game is supposed to make me feel smart, and it makes me feel dumb.
That I empathize with.
Yeah.
Totally.
Anyway, we sent out a link on our Twitter feed to the video. Mm-hmm. If you are looking for it and you don't want to sort through our Twitter, simply go to YouTube and just type in White Lightning HQ. Off the top of my head, I think it's called Kerbal Rescue Mission.
Yeah, just watch all the Kerbal videos.
Yeah. And watch the Civ 5 videos, too. Those are funny.
Yeah.
Those are really funny. The Kerbal Rescue Mission video that they have, it has all the Kerbals in it. Valentina is even in there. Mm-hmm. So I think I figured out something about White Lightning HQ, though.
What's that?
Well, in the past, I've always talked about how funny they are and how much I've enjoyed their videos.
Yeah.
I've always thought of them as some video game fans who are also very good at writing and performing these funny little video things. Mm-hmm. I think I figured out what they're up to. I always thought that was the point.
Oh.
Apparently, that's not the point.
Oh, you figured it out, huh?
I figured out what they're really doing. Because the latest video has Valentina Kerbin in it. They did one before that where it's Civ 5 and they're talking about the warlord Gandhi.
Yeah.
Which, I've always talked about. One of the things I think is so funny about Civ 5 is Gandhi in the game is this aggressive, maniacal, military...
Like tyrant.
Yeah, this military tyrant. And it's always made me laugh that Gandhi is constantly... attacking me and denouncing me. And I mean, if there's a nuke, Gandhi's going to use it on me. And I'm thinking, this is in such sharp contrast to the actual Gandhi. But they did a video about, how are we going to deal with the warlord Gandhi? Well, in the video, it is all the world leaders around a big conference table, and 3 of the world leaders are girls. Mm-hmm. Okay, Elizabeth and Catherine and... I can't remember the last one, but anyway.
Cleopatra?
Yeah, something. Mm-hmm. But my point is, I always thought that these were 3 really funny guys that were trying to make funny videos about Kerbal or about video games.
Uh-huh.
They're trying to meet girls.
Ah.
That's what this is.
That's what everything is.
That's what it is. That's what they did was they finally got enough, and then they were like, hey girls, we're big time YouTube video producers.
They're funny too, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're really funny.
They, the writing is hilarious. They're extremely good writers.
Yeah.
But they're also very good performers because that type of almost dry, sarcastic humor, that ironic type humor, it's not easy to do. It looks easy when it's done well.
The delivery is hard.
That's exactly right, because the delivery works a lot on tone and pauses. And they have it. And I'm amazed that they're able to find, I can understand 3 friends being able to, to kind of have that sense of humor together, but they're bringing in outside people as well. Mm-hmm. So they, for whatever reason, have a pretty good talent pool around them. Anyway, that's a long way of me saying I thoroughly enjoyed and continue to enjoy their videos.
Yeah.
Go to YouTube, simply search for White Lightning HQ, and just be prepared to laugh. I have a program note before we continue. Nos is not going to be with us next week. Did you say it was a wedding or a birthday party?
Yeah, it's a wedding.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could
Not my wedding, but a wedding.
Is there something you want to tell us?
Nothing I'm proud of.
Okay. Well, that's true. Oh, that would be a whole different podcast, wouldn't it? But anyway, Nos is not going to be with us next week, so Amy is going to sit in.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to do, Amy, sometime this coming week, is going to see The Martian. And so Amy and I are going to do another After the Credits, The Martian Revisited, and we're going to do it next week.
Which will also have your responses to The Martian. So
Right.
if you want to get those in, send them in now, and they should be in the After the Credits.
That's right. We got a couple of letters this week talking about The Martian. We're holding them for next week. And if you have seen The Martian and you want to write in and talk about it, we're going to revisit The Martian next week after the credits. And obviously you can be as spoiler-tastic as you want because it will be well billboarded that it's going to be full of spoilers.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you have comments or thoughts about The Martian, opinions, whatever, please send them in, and we will put them in next week's After the Credits. And it's going to be me and the British Badger, because that's her new nickname.
Oh, yeah.
One last thing.
Uh-huh.
I was telling you about this. Nos is our CMP, the command module pilot.
Yeah.
He is leaving us at the end of the year. And I have decided, rather than bring Amy in and make her the CMP, we are going to do the baseball equivalent of retiring Nos's number.
Oh.
You will always be the CMP. When Amy joins us, she is going to be the CSB, the Command Space Badger. And that sound you heard is Amy groaning. Oh, no, I'm going to be the Space Badger. No, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I'm going to be the Space Badger.
That's close enough.
There you go.
I fell for it.
Remember, letters at kerbalpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Big announcement from Squad this week. Let's get the details with Caffeine Rage.
Greetings, I'm Caffeine Rage with your weekly Squad report, reporting on all the news fit to repeat. In a surprising move this past week, Squad has announced the splitting of patch 1.1. The new upcoming patch, 1.0.5, will contain several pieces of content originally slated to be released alongside the Unity 5 update. Moving up to 1.0.5 is Ironside's contextual contracts, the thermal improvements by River Dude, the completed portion of PorkJet's parts, and a wide assortment of bug fixes. When asked about the update on the forums, Casper Vid said, "We're still working on KSP 1.1, which will have the Unity 5 update. Since it's taking longer than we expected, we took the parts that are ready to go and can be used in the Unity 4 version as well, and we're making them available as 1.0.5 now. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have you guys wait for those bits." The new update is now in QA, and its release estimate will be given later based on how smoothly the process goes. During Squadcast, Max Maps did go on the record saying that it might be sooner than you think based on past examples of QA. While Squad preps 1.0.5, work also continues on Update 1.1, which Squad is still targeting to get out before the year's end. Harvester has been focused on the flight interface, and he has also been going over all the UI elements that have started their move over to the new system, but were still pending revisions, making sure they're ready to go for the update. During this time, he's also added a few new things here or there to areas of KSP that haven't been visited in quite a while. An example of this is now Kerbal Knots will display their roles and levels when hovering over their portraits in career mode. Having finished up work on the KSpedia, with only the compiling of help screens remaining, Mew has moved on to updating the part tools in preparation of 1.0.5. The new part tools will give modders the ability to use any shader built into the game, and will also allow for the creation of asset bundles containing shaders for KSP, which could be loaded as a normal asset that could then be used in mods. Unfortunately, until the Unity 5 update, these asset bundles will have to be built in Unity 4, which itself requires a pro license. A new tweening controller to handle movable user interface elements was on Romfur's plate this past week. Initially, the controller will be used by staging to move the list elements into place. In the new Unity interface, The size and position of list elements are handled by their own internal controllers, so once an item is in such a list, it cannot be moved. For example, in the simplest case, you pick up a stage group. In order to make the list move fluidly in, to close the gap of the element you just removed, a special, invisible list element is placed where the element you removed was. Immediately, it starts resizing until the height becomes 0 and it destroys itself. While the resizing element is there, the indexes of the stage groups does not match the indexes in the list. And this is what the tween controller does best, figuring out what is where and where it ought to be as well. After getting the fixes for the 1.0.5 update in place, Nathan Keel has set his sights on bug fixes that will come in the Unity 5 update. Some of these fixes are the more infamous of KSP's bugs, such as launch clamps following the rocket, air brakes that can't have their action groups changed, and various bugs related to the claw. Finally, Andrea and Casper Vid have been making progress during the last couple weeks on the media group applications. Nearly all the applicants have been assessed, and email should have gone out by the time this report is aired with the results. Good luck. And that's it for the news this week. Now back to America Samoa's favorite podcast.
American Samoa. That's false advertising, though. We've only had one download in American Samoa,
Yeah.
and never again.
Well, as far as we know, that's the only podcast download that has been there.
That's true. That's true. You know what? That episode was so good.
Yeah.
They just keep listening to it over and over.
Uh-huh.
They don't know that there's more episodes. There's 70 episodes. You got 69 others to listen to. I want to say a big thank you to Caffeine Rage for the squad report. We didn't really last week. We kind of blasted past it, but he really does a good job with that.
Yeah.
And I should mention, I don't know if I've said this before. I had asked him because he knows a lot of people on the forums and he's heavily involved in the community. And I said, do you know of anybody that would be a good fit for doing a squad report? And he was like, yeah, me. And I was like, okay.
All right.
So, I mean, he volunteered for it and he does an excellent job with it. And I really do appreciate what he does. And folks, if you get a chance, send out just on Twitter sometime, just tweet out, hey, Caffeine Rage, we enjoyed your squad report. Thanks for all the hard work you do. He talked about 1.0.5. And I have something to say, but the other thing that he mentioned that I was going to comment on, Squad apparently has said that 1.1, they're trying to get it out by the end of the year. I had a sneaking suspicion that because it's a 1.1, they were thinking about releasing it on January the 1st.
Oh, I could see that.
But if they're shooting for by the end of the year, I want 1.1 right now, but I could see them going 1.1 January 1.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope I didn't just give them an idea.
Yeah, because we don't know their internal dates, so they could set it to whatever they want.
That's Squad. They have internal dates, but they don't ever share them.
Yeah, which is smart because the moment you get behind is whenever people start complaining.
Yeah.
If they don't know when it is, then they can't really say you're ahead or behind.
See, I don't know if this is true. I would like to think that if they announced a date and then said we're running behind, I would be okay with that because I don't know that I would. I do know, and I'm going to sound critical here, but I'm going to be very cautious about how I do it. I was very disappointed by the 1.0.5 announcement. Mm-hmm. But in fairness, anything other than them announcing 1.1 and putting it in my hands was going to disappoint me.
Because you already built up for it.
I want more than anything. I want the 64-bit. I want the multi-core processing. I want the expanded RAM usage. I want that. To me is the single most important thing I want. And when they announced 1.0.5, I immediately went through the features list, and it was like contextual contracts, don't care. New parts, don't care. Thermal issues, well, okay, fine. Bug fixes, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But there was nothing there that I was just really wanting. So that's not a knock on Squad because the bar in my mind is, anything that's not 1.1 is going to disappoint me. Mm-hmm. I wanted a kiss and you guys gave me a hug.
Yeah.
So to get that image out of your head.
Well, I mean, I know what Max Maps looks like. I know what you look like. So,
Are you imagining this? Oh my God!
It's just burned in there.
Is this like fanfic now?
Maybe.
Is this like the Kirk and Spock love affair?
Yeah.
Max Maps, you've been warned. There's apparently /fic written about us.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? Am I being too hard on this?
Well, I mean, the way I see it is like right now I'm playing a game that's in early access. Mm-hmm. And
which game?
Nuclear Throne.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I saw you playing that the other day.
I love that game. So right now I'm playing it in a
that's pronounced nuclear.
Nuclear Throne.
Yeah.
Yeah. In this game it may be. But I'm playing it. And
remember, send your letters to kerbalpodcast@gmail.com.
I got it at early access. Mm. Whenever I paid the money for it, I wasn't paying for what I would potentially get. I was paying for what existed.
Right.
Because I've seen a lot of early access games just not happen. Mm-hmm. Like, they just stopped at that point. So I'll only buy an early access game if I'm okay with buying it and paying that money for what it currently is and hoping for more. Mm-hmm. That's what I kind of was at with... I mean, I didn't pay for my copy of Kerbal. You did. But whenever it came to it, it's like anything extra. Now, with the progress they were making, whenever they got it to the version 1... Mm-hmm. That's like, okay, well, that's everything that I paid for in the hopes to get.
And you're talking about Nuclear Throne now, not Kerbal.
I'm talking about Kerbal.
Oh, you are talking about, okay.
Whenever they hit version 1, I'm like, okay, well, that's...
Biff zoned out for a minute there.
I bought it getting everything that I knew I would get, plus everything that they said they would give me up to version 1.
Right.
Anything after that is just more icing on a very nice cake.
Oh, okay.
So whenever they say it's like, oh, 1.1's coming and it has all this stuff, I'm like, okay, cool. Well, they didn't set a date. So I don't know. Maybe it's better to get half of that stuff now so you have something to tide you over until they do hit that date.
Yeah.
Like, I'd almost take that, It's like, well, I'm grocery shopping and I'm hungry and I can't eat the food yet because I haven't paid for it.
I'll get a coconut.
But there's the people handing out samples, so I'll just have a few samples to tide me over till I get home.
Yeah. I'm very mixed at the 1.0.5 announcement because part of me says the fact that they're releasing what they have instead of waiting shows what a great company they are.
Yeah.
And how devoted they are to their fan base.
And we know that's a huge problem.
And then
okay.
on the other side,
I was waiting for the problem to show up.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I'm saying is
my biggest beef with them is they're just so great.
No, there was a counterpoint.
Okay.
No, here comes the counterpoint. No, the part of it is, I looked at that and I said, wow, that is a really nice thing that Squad is doing. And then the other part of me went, but I really don't care because it's not 1.1.
It's not 1.1 or it's not the parts of 1.1 that you wanted.
Right.
If you would have gotten the parts that you wanted, would you have been fine with, like, okay, well, you guys can do 1.1 whenever because I already got the things I wanted?
If they, I don't want any parts. What I want, what I was hoping for, and again, I will be the first to say I am probably being unfair. I'm aware of that. If they had announced that we're going to release a 64-bit version of this game that runs multi-core and it uses as much RAM as you've got, and we're not going to add a single other feature than that, I would have been doing the funky chicken.
Okay, so if that would have been...
Trust me, you don't want to see that.
If that would have been the 1.0.5, would be getting that, and they'd say when 1.1 comes, we'll give you all the other stuff we said.
Right.
You would have been happy.
I would have been thrilled.
So you got the piece of cake. You just didn't get the piece of cake you wanted.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they gave me part of the cake, but not the part that I wanted.
Okay.
That is a good way to put it.
Yeah. It wasn't frosted yet. You wanted it frosted.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I know Caffeine Rage later in the program is going to weigh in. For all I know, he's dancing and spiking the football.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I was disappointed. Again, unfairly so.
Yeah, I get it. As far as I go, the stuff that they're giving me is more stuff to use, and I'm not really the parts that you're wanting aren't parts that I'm needing.
Right.
So, like the sections of the update of 1.1 that you're not getting are not parts that I am using. right now it runs fine. I don't have a lot of issues. I don't have any mods. So I'm just getting more things to play with. Whereas you want more room and more capacity and speed to play with the things you have. So
you have to understand, I have never had, I mean, I've built gaming desktops before. I've never had a gaming laptop. I've never gone out and bought something that was specifically designed to be a gaming powerhouse. I've never done that before.
yeah.
So when I got my gaming laptop, I mean, that was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I finally had the money. I finally had the wherewithal to do it. I finally got my gaming laptop. And to not be able to use it to its full potential is a little frustrating for me.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I said, I think it was last episode or episode before, you know, Amy and Jay Arthur, and I think Caffeine Rage too, have all talked about the fact that KSP frequently crashes for them. And I had said, I have not run into crashing issues. Well, apparently the fates were listening because they went, aha, you shall run into crashing issues now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's what I ran into this past week. And I think it boils down to, do you remember I talked about remote tech and how it was bogging down my system? I wanted to toss in a caveat about that. You know, I like to spend a lot of time watching Twitch, and I really enjoy watching Oak Tree 42. He is very good. I was watching him earlier this week, and he has got remote tech installed. He's got so many satellites that his satellites have satellites. Okay? I mean, he's got a comm network that makes Kerbin look like it is surrounded by a spider web.
Yeah.
Okay? So obviously, when I'm talking about having trouble with remote tech bogging down my system, I'm talking about something that is specific to me. Kerbal is a game that's meant to run on home computers, Macs and Linux and PCs. And so obviously Kerbal is never running in the same environment twice, or rarely is running in the same environment twice. So when I say that remote tech is bogging down my system, I may be the only person who's having that problem.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the fact that Oak Tree is running remote tech and he's running it probably 50 times more than I was and not having the slightest bit of trouble with it.
Yeah.
Whereas I think I had 10 satellites up and it was bogging down my game. So something about my system or my install or something was causing it to bog down. Running into that issue, I uninstalled remote tech and kept playing. Well, then the game started crashing. Every time I reverted back to vehicle assembly, the game would crash. It would literally crash to desktop.
And that's something you do kind of often.
Yeah. And also, that's something that had never happened to me before.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, I think it was Jay Arthur made the comment that when you put in, it may have been Jay Arthur, but he made the comment that when you install a mod, sometimes it will change something, whether it'll change the save or it'll do something behind the scenes that you're not aware of, and simply removing the mod doesn't necessarily remove what it's done.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened, because what I did was, after the game, I mean, it got to the point where literally every time I'd launch, revert to VAB, and the game would crash. So what I ended up doing was I completely uninstalled the game, reinstalled it. And when I say uninstalled, completely uninstalled, I mean I literally went in and erased the game folder itself. I mean, I didn't just tell Steam to delete local content and then reinstalled it, because when you do that, it doesn't uninstall the game. It basically says, okay, it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
Even though it is. I literally went in and deleted the game folder itself and then had it download a completely fresh copy. And then I went and I got all my mods, completely fresh copies of them, and installed them. So I started a brand new version of KSP, and I have not had a single crash since. The game has been running absolutely smooth ever since.
Yeah.
Now, mods, I installed Kerbal Engineer. I installed Kerbal Attachment System. I skipped Kerbal Inventory System this time because I wasn't using any of those parts. And I installed Infernal Robotics. Those are the 3 mods I'm working with right now.
Okay.
Did not install Remote Tech.
Yeah.
So, and again, game's running just fine. But, getting back to my earlier point, the fact that I was having game crashes, again, I was thinking, I really wish, because I've limited the number of mods I'm using, I really wish I had the 64-bit multi-core,
to fully,
sky's the limit RAM version of this game.
Fully utilize everything you can with your machine.
Right. Which probably would not have solved the crashing issue.
Yeah. You would have just been able to have more mods, and so you wouldn't know which one was causing the crashing issue. So,
anyway.
You can always have that.
We'll always have crashes.
And we'll always have progress.
Yeah.
So, how was yours?
That was most of my progress right there. The one thing that I did do this week, this was pre-crashes, was it occurred to me I've never really done much with rovers. I mean, I've had a few, but I've never really messed around with rovers much.
For how much, how often I've gone to the Mun, I've never actually tried to take a rover there. I mean, I guess I did because I put a rollie on the Mun, and I was able to roll around and, just traverse the Mun's craters. But
well, I think the Martian is what got me thinking about this.
Yeah.
Because Mars is littered with probes and rovers and things that we have, put up there over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be kind of neat to put my own rover on Duna. And so for the first time since 1.0, because 1.0 introduced the utility bays that have the opening doors on them, the doors that open kind of DeLorean style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It turns out those things are exactly the right size for a rover. So I built a little tiny rover.
Yeah.
And I put it inside of one of those things.
Is it probe driven or Kerbal driven?
Probe driven.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this is a completely unmanned rover.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I'm saying is, when I've taken something with 4 wheels to the Mun or to Duna or whatever, generally there's a Kerbal sitting in it.
Mm-hmm.
I have not done a lot of remote rovers.
Yeah.
So what I did, and this will only work on either Duna or Lathe. An atmosphere is required for this particular setup. But the way I set it up was it was a rocket, and sitting on the very top of it was this utility bay with a rover sitting inside of it. And on top of the utility bay was a parachute. Mm-hmm. And what I did was I put it into an orbit around Duna, and I think I put my periapsis at like 15 kilometers, and I put a heat shield on the bottom of it. And then that brought it all the way down to the ground. And the nice thing about Duna does not have any oceans. So no matter where you land, you're going to land on land.
Yeah.
Lathe, on the other hand, I would not want to try this simply because the land masses are so small. And once you release the probe, you have no control at all at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did was I released it and I let the atmosphere aerobrake it, and it set it on the ground, and then the utility bay opened up, and out came my little rover and just roved around. So that was fun.
Yeah.
I know it's not a huge accomplishment, but it's not something I'd ever done before. And it was kind of nice to actually, because that's kind of how we've done Mars rovers in the past, which is, we've sent them there and we've let them, with the way we've done it in the past is they have the big inflatable, it almost looks like a thing of grapes,
mm-hmm.
and it hits the ground and bounces around and then finally comes to a stop, and the big grapes deflate and the rover pops out. I kind of did the same thing, except I did it with the utility bay, and a parachute. So, but that was my big progress, and then the rest of the week has simply been reinstalling and getting my space station back up in orbit and rebuilding the ships.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I did a complete wipe, I wiped everything. No saved games, no saved ships, nothing. So most of the week has been spent rebuilding just back to where I was before. Anyway. So what does NOS gets all lined up mean?
I have everything lined up to, was having so many issues trying to get just a big tank up in orbit, which is so weird. Mm-hmm. It's so weird because my
because you're lifting all the dead weight. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and because I was trying to use as little fuel from that tank as possible.
Okay,
but I'd gotten tanks that big up with my Minmus lander.
Right.
You know, like whenever I first went to Minmus, like I was able to do that. Mm-hmm. It was not difficult, and I didn't know exactly where I was going wrong. You know, and and so I was like looking at my launch profile and messing around with it. And I was like, why, trying to build something to launch up there. I was like, why don't I just send the Minmus lander? Mm-hmm. And I just do 2 of those. And so I sent that up there, and now it's just 2 small fuel tanks. And it was kind of fun. I'd never messed with fairings.
Oh, okay.
And those things are a little weird, like when it comes to putting them on, mm-hmm. like trying to figure out
how to build them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I got them built, and it was kind of fun because it was like the final product that's in orbit around Kerbin is a fuel tank with some nuke engine, with a nuke engine. Mm-hmm. So, because I'm going to do very small adjustments, RCS tank, battery, all that. And the end of it, like the fairings would pop off, and then I would decouple the nose cone, and there's the mouth of it, the docking port.
Oh, okay.
And so basically I'm going to flip these things around and have them kiss. Because it's two identical craft.
You sure you're not going to have them hug?
Yeah.
Because I know you want to kiss, but you might just get a hug.
I don't know. They may end up wrapped around each other by the end of it.
Well, there's some fanfic.
Yeah. So I have them both around, going off of the letter that I sent in when J. Arthur and Amy Kay were doing it. Mm-hmm. We're doing the podcast.
Right.
I put them both around 100 meters.
100 kilometers?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, 100 kilometers, apoapsis, periapsis, like both. They're around there. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to start, basically I'm going to save that as a hard point and keep going back to it as I try to get them both to rendezvous.
Oh, okay.
And then just once I do, go back and try to do it again and try to do it again. So,
can you describe the ship that you're talking about? Because I'm trying to get a picture.
Essentially, if you were to start from the top going down, like if it was in the VAB, the current ship that is in orbit would be docking port, fuel tank, actually docking port, a bunch of like utility stuff like battery and RCS tank.
Okay.
Fuel tank, and then nuke engine, and that's pretty much it.
Where's your control point? What's controlling it? Or are you just putting it up?
Right behind the docking port is a probe core.
Okay. I didn't know if you were just putting it up as dead weight, but it actually has some control.
Yeah, both of them do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can still control both of them.
Okay. And you can control them with RCS and the nuke engines.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
Some of my adjustments I've been making just with RCS.
Okay.
So
when they connect with each other, is that going to are there other docking ports other than the 2 on the front? In other words, when they go nose to nose, is there going to be another point where someone can dock to it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not the foundation for a space station.
Gotcha.
Or anything. It is just rendezvous practice.
Okay. So, I see what you're doing. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully I can get that down enough and understand it enough that I can start putting big things up and maybe get a space station.
Okay.
Or maybe get enough of a thing up there so I can refuel and try to make it to Duna.
So when you get them connected, you're basically going to they're going to be nose to nose, which means there's going to be 2 engines
facing opposite directions. Yeah.
Facing opposite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Functionally, this has no purpose whatsoever, but it's not what it's about.
Once you get them docked, I dare you to hit full throttle.
See if they just compress.
They'll probably start spinning or something.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got all choked up.
Yeah.
That's, when you're laughing at your own jokes is bad enough, but then getting choked up laughing at your own jokes is like even worse.
It's too good. Sorry, guys. My body doesn't function normally in the...
I'm curious about something you said. You were talking about fairings, and you said those were a little difficult. What's your difficulty?
So it's like you play... I guess I got confused as to what exactly they do. I mean, I know what they do, like the function of them, but how to work them onto the craft using the controls in Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah.
So I would put it on, and it instantly want me to start adjusting it. I was like, not right now, and so I click it off, and I put the things on there. I attached again, so it can, so I actually have something to adjust around. Well, when I do, like as I move the mouse around, it grows and shrinks and whatever. From what I can understand, I left mouse button click to stop its current shape.
Right.
And it gives me a second shape to work with. And that's where I close it where I want and then click left mouse button again to stop it? Or
yeah, what you do is it builds in sections, and you can only build so high.
Yeah.
Okay. And so like you'll build your first section and you'll click your left button, and then you build the next section and click your left button. And then when you get to where you're done and you want to close it, you pull it into a point and then click it, and it closes the fairing.
See, I haven't seen it close to a point. It's still open at the top.
Okay, well, you have to kind of, you know how you're going up
Yeah.
with your mouse, with your cursor? You have to kind of go in, which is kind of hard to describe, but instead of going, top to bottom, you actually kind of go left to right or right to left.
Yeah, okay.
Procedural fairings does it a little differently. It creates kind of like a ghost shape around it, and then you actually put like a shell, and then the shell like just creates itself in the shape that you need.
Contours it to the stuff.
There are advantages to procedural fairings, but there are also advantages to stock fairings as well. Stock fairings are a lot. To me, my experience with stock fairings has been that they deploy a lot better.
Yeah.
Simply because stock fairings, when you do deploy them, they deploy into a bunch of little pieces. Procedural fairings, my experience has been when you deploy it, you get these two giant shells, which sometimes, not often, but sometimes will then proceed to crash into your ship.
Because they don't fly out far enough.
That, or what'll happen, and I've run into this too, is they'll get snagged on a bottom stage engine, or they'll get snagged on something, and then you're flying around and you've got like these two flapping jaws that you can't dislodge. And you're going, like, get off of there. So.
Huh. Yeah.
And I literally say that.
You yell at it.
I yell, get off of there. Because that helps.
They can hear you.
They can hear you.
Yeah.
Throw sand in his eyes.
But really, that's all I have. Is I've just been getting those lined up and tweaking around on the orbits to try to get them close.
Okay.
I think
that's the first time you've actually used fairings, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, please continue.
Working on a maneuver node, so I make the maneuver node, and I'm just drifting in space until I get there.
Right.
I don't know the burn time until I start burning.
It doesn't show you.
No.
That's weird, because mine will usually give me an estimate on the burn time.
Yeah, see, mine won't. The moment I start a burn, it will give me a burn time. The problem is, sometimes it's longer or shorter than I anticipated, or depending on the amount of burn, it's different when the next time I start burning. And it also doesn't do anything whenever I start using RCS.
Question. The maneuver nodes that you're creating, you're still primarily going to the MUN and to Minmus.
I mean, even with these, just making orbits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just trying to make orbits that were even. Like, I can't get a solid 100 kilometers on apoapsis periapsis orbit because I'm never sure what I'm supposed to be burning.
Okay. My experience with maneuver nodes has been that the smaller the move is that you're trying to make, the more leeway you have in making it.
Yeah.
Meaning if you're trying to create an orbit around Kerbin, or you're trying to get an encounter with the MUN, it's less important. You have more of a margin for error. If, for example, you're trying to do a transfer from Kerbin to Duna, then it doesn't take very much for you to completely overshoot the encounter. Whereas when you do an encounter with the MUN, for example, my experience has been you can burn way past the encounter or way under the encounter and still be okay.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. I guess
remember, send those letters to kerbalpodcast@gmail.com.
I'm guessing I'm having some sort of issue with my game then, if it's just not telling me that.
That is so weird that you're running into that.
Like that's a weirdly specific issue.
Can I ask you a question? Are you using which capsule are you using? Mark III or Mark I?
For this?
Yeah.
The probe core.
You're using the probe core. Okay.
Yeah. And it's in sandbox, so I don't have any like career restrictions causing that. So I don't know, it's really odd. Because whenever I've heard everyone talking about, like, how do you get your maneuver nodes so accurate? Because it's not until I start burning do I know, but then since I've started burning, it's altered my, stuff. So.
Okay, I know that you are probably going to throw Wilson at me if I say this.
Reinstall my game?
No.
What?
Kerbal Engineer.
Yeah, I don't know. I may have to do it. But even then, like, will Kerbal Engineer tell me how long the burn is?
Kerbal Engineer, and I don't know if this is default or not because I haven't looked at it in a while, but one of the options that you can put on there is it will tell you time to burn and length of burn.
Okay, then I guess I'll be doing that. Because I don't want to have to reinstall my game just to fix that one problem, but that one problem is going to keep me from advancing in the game at the pace that I need to.
If I remember correctly, and I'm not looking at my computer as I say this, so bear with me. I believe the way to install Kerbal Engineer, if I remember the steps correctly, is you go into your program files x86, Steam apps, common, Kerbal Space Program, game data, and then copy Kerbal Engineer into there.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll have to do that then.
Okay.
Yeah. So that.
But I'm trying to remember. Didn't I show you? Wasn't it a couple of weeks ago that we actually?
Yeah.
And didn't I show you that I had when I made a maneuver node? It actually showed what my burn time was and time to burn and everything.
And I think it did it without Kerbal Engineer. I think it was just.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It did it as part of the game.
Yeah. So
that's why I don't understand why you're not.
It's such a small thing to not exist, especially since anytime there's been an update, like Steam has automatically updated the game. So I don't know.
All right, I'm asking the listeners, does anybody have any idea what's going on here? Because I'm kind of baffled.
Actually, whenever I recently moved and built a new computer, I've downloaded the game fresh. So it's not even like I have an old version.
Well, I was going to say, I wouldn't think that would...
Yeah.
I mean, I would think, if anything, a new version of the game would solve the problem, not create the problem.
Yeah. So, no, that's what I'm saying is I don't even... I've recently downloaded it. So it's not like I haven't...
That's so strange.
I don't know. Weird.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that's it for my progress.
Okay.
Just getting everything lined up to practice Rendezvous.
Listeners, do you have any idea what might be going on here? Because I'm really kind of... I have not run into this. Time to burn and length of burn has always been part of my maneuver nodes that I can remember.
Yeah, so, the estimated burn is just not there.
Yeah. And also, I do want to make that point again. Given that Kerbal runs in so many multiple environments, when we talk about a problem...
It's kind of hard to pinpoint it.
Yeah.
This seems to be a general interface problem, though, so I think there's a little bit more relation to other people's issues there. So that's it for our progress.
Okay.
What's J. Arthur been up to?
Progress this week, not too shabby. Made it to the Mun and back on the stream. And have been doing many things for the latest Let's Play that's going to go up on my YouTube channel on Monday. So I've been doing the Monday night Kerbalcast stream, and I've got some ideas to improve that I need to run past some of the members of Kerbalcast. That being Biff, Nos, and then Freetoss, even though he's dead, and Caffeine Rage, and Amy, and some of the others, but I'm not there yet, so... We will have to see what happens with all of those things when I get them in motion. But Monday for me now is Kerbal Monday, so I'm going to have my regular Let's Plays going up on Monday, plus the stream at night, and I will make sure that the tutorials also get posted on Monday. So, yay for consistency. Things to talk about this week. Update 1.0.5 dropping whenever it's going to drop. I wasn't really sure how I felt about this, to be honest. When I hosted the podcast a couple of weeks ago, I was quite annoyed that they still had not released the 64-bit version because they were holding on to all of this extra stuff. Maybe not all of it, but at least some of the extra stuff that's coming in this update. So on the one hand, I'm happy to get an update with some bug fixes and potentially some other new things. They were supposed to talk about it more in Squadcast tonight, but I missed Squadcast and I'm not going to go watch it. That's Rage's job. But I am happy about bug fixes, and they've said that a huge focus is going to be the thermal system. So I'm hoping that means no more random overheating. We will see, and I would be happy if that got fixed. because probably 50% of my problems come from parts randomly overheating and exploding for one reason or another. They also have said that contextual contracts are going to be in 1.0.5, so I'm pretty happy about that. I can just keep going with my career save games with my contextual stuff added on top of it. I'm starting to get a very cluttered space around Kerbin and the Mun as I put things up to get money. The first ever Kerbalcast MP stream went very well tonight. I'm recording this after that's over, so my voice is a little shot and I am a little tired, but it was worth it. We had a great time playing Civ, and we didn't get super far into our game because anyone who's ever played Civ knows that it takes like 1,000,000 hours to play a whole game. But we got the ball rolling. We plan on playing again tomorrow night, which would be Saturday, and I'll be streaming it again, but I'm not going to post 1,000,000 times on Twitter. It's just going to be a normal stream notification. And we probably won't finish then either. I'd say that we'll wind up playing again next week, or next weekend, and trying to finish it maybe then, in which case next Friday's Kerbalcast MP will be us finishing that as well. And I'm considering that, trying to make that a regular thing, Kerbalcast MP Fridays, where that we all get together and play some games and I stream it. But we'll see. We had I feel like a pretty decent turnout. There was quite a few people coming and going in the chat for a while. And as we were getting towards the end, it was starting to peter off. I mean, we'd been playing for several hours, and Civ is a hard game to watch, especially in the early stages when you're mostly just building things and exploring with your spearmen. But we had a good time, and I'm looking forward to playing some more and doing that a whole lot more. The final thing for today's audio letter is The Martian, of course. Everybody is seeing it and talking about it, and Biff has mentioned, or he mentioned, I should say, tonight when he was watching us on Twitch, that they might do another Martian after the credits, because now a lot more people are writing in about it. And my contribution to that is going to be, hopefully next week, perhaps the week after that, I might try and coordinate with them a bit better. And when I say I might, I will. But I am going to do a psych profile of Watney and send that in. Because in the last After the Credits where they discussed The Martian, they talked quite a bit about his humor in his journal entries and the emotion that they showed in the movies compared to kind of the lack of emotion that was in the book. So I'm going to take some time, talk about that, do a little bit of analysis of Mark Watney, and maybe put together a case study of him, and then I'll record it and give it to them for the After the Dark segment. Or they can play portions of it, and then you can hear the whole thing on my YouTube channel. That about wraps it up for this audio letter, so I'll speak to you guys again real soon.
Thanks, J. Arthur. It was, yeah. I mean, I could understand, especially, talking about it in the previous couple podcasts, being upset about it not being here yet with the 1.0.5.
Well, at least that tells me that I'm not alone in my opinion.
Yeah.
Again, I know it's unfair, but I really kind of, there's one thing I want, and regardless, I mean, until they give me that one thing, I'm going to be a little disappointed.
Yeah. I'm also I'm looking forward to hearing about the Watney.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
The Watney.
The Watney.
Do the Watney.
Yeah.
I'm curious, since we have 2 or I guess 3 opinions now on 1.0.5.
Yeah.
Folks, if you have some thoughts about this, please let us know. kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. I'm curious. I mean, are we the outliers here? Are we disappointed and we're the only ones, or are you disappointed? Are you happy about it?
Yeah. I mean, are you grateful you're getting something? It's better to get something soon than everything later.
Better to get a hug instead of a kiss.
Yeah. You got something.
You got something.
I mean, you can just I mean, that doesn't mean it's over.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, the segment's over.
First stage expended. Second stage. The mission briefing.
And that means your letters and tweets, and we start out with the latest visit from Jim and Zip.
Day 1. I'm holed up in the bouncy castle. I had to retreat to here to grab supplies. I'd left my fluffy slippers in the locker and I couldn't let those fall into enemy hands. but now I can hear them all scratching at the door. There's only one chance. If I turn it up to full pressure and overinflate the castle, when I open the doors, the blast of air should blow them into the goddamn airlock. Day 2. They have taken the bridge and the second corridor. I have barred the airlock, but it cannot hold them for long. The ground shakes. Skunks. Skunks in the deep. I cannot get out. A ferret lurks in the dark. I cannot get out. Oh, they are coming. Day 3. Things are looking hopeless. There's no way I'll be able to retake the station. I'm going to get to the escape pod, take off, and nuke the station from orbit. It's the only way to be sure. Day 3 addendum. I've had to abandon my previous plan for 2 key reasons. Firstly, the escape pod is infested with weasels, and secondly, I don't actually have any nukes. Day 4. I've managed to patch into the computer core and look up badges in the station database to find out what their weakness is. All I can find is an obscure video about them, but it appears they're terrified of snakes. Snakes? Why did it have to be snakes? Day 5. The badgers have got into the greenhouses. I can't let this continue. They can take the bounce out of my castle. They can take my escape pod. They can take my sense of smell. But they cannot take my Crispies! Bright lights, bright lights. Yippee-ki-yay, Mother Badger.
Zip, can you hear me?
Litho, is that you?
Oh, at last. We were starting to worry about you. The station was tumbling, so we lost most ground comms. We've sent an update program to the onboard probe core, but we've had to wait until we could get the whole thing uploaded. What's been going on up there?
It's all sorted now. I've driven back the invading hordes.
The what?
It's been terrible, I tell you. Fiendish creatures everywhere, trying to drive me out of the station. I was scared for my life. If I hadn't discovered the badgers are nocturnal, so they're afraid of bright lights, I don't know how I could have survived. And the badgers were definitely the ringleaders. The past few days have been terrifying. It's such a relief that it's finally over. But they fell victim to one of the classic blunders. Never go up against a Kerbal when Crispies are on the line.
But, Zip, you were only out of contact for 45 minutes.
What?
Yeah. We've been going over the telemetry as it's come down in bursts, alongside a few brief audio clips. It looks like one of the cages had come open in flight, letting 2 badgers loose in the station, and one of them chewed through a cable in the attitude control systems. We uploaded the new stability control program to the station core, in the windows when we had limited comms, but we couldn't raise you until now.
Just 2 badgers?
Yep. I think you may have been just slightly overestimating the peril factor. And watching too much Netflix before bed.
But...
Oh, and the word you were looking for is testament, by the way.
Oh yeah, that makes more sense. Oh no, you didn't hear that, did you?
Hear it? We taped it.
This is the last will and testicle of Wilbert Zip Kerman. If I don't survive the coming battle, then this is my dying wish for the distribution of my possessions. To Val, I leave my K-Pod and my docking playlists. I'm sure she'll put them to good use. To Jeb, I leave all my back issues of Green and Gorgeous magazine. I'm sure he'll put them to good use. To Biff, I leave my She Who Must Not Be Named album. And a hammer. To Shrink, I leave my narcissism and my huge ego. Maybe he can display them in his office. To my mother-in-law, I leave the truth. It was me that broke that teapot, but I'm not sorry because it was hideous, even if it was an heirloom. When they make a movie retelling my tragic end, I want to be played by Robert Kerman Jr. He has the right mix of gravitas and wit to almost pull it off. Lastly, I know that you'll want to bury me with full honours, but I would prefer a small, dignified ceremony, with just immediate family, close friends, and world leaders present. And maybe a few pop stars. And a couple of movie stars. Oh, and all these centerfolds from Green and Gorgeous.
Jeb pointed out that we should keep it, since we may need it after the next time you visit your mother-in-law.
I'm in so much trouble, aren't I?
Homer to your mobile, Zip. Homer to your mobile.
Can I say it? Can I please say it?
What?
I think Zip has been smoking the Crispies.
Yeah? Yeah, he's losing he's losing hours in the day, doing things he's not remembering doing.
I think the only thing that was missing was he needed to be listening to Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
The colors, man. Yes, thanks for the hammer, by the way, because I would definitely need that.
Yeah.
I love the Jim and Zip segments. Those are so fun. Even if I spend half of them with my mouth hanging open going, what the heck?
Yeah.
At the beginning, I was going, what is happening? So anyway, Lithobreaker does those, and they are just absolutely hilarious. Thank you so much. Don't forget, later in the show, we will have another Zips Tips, which helps us to play the game. Let's get into the letters now. First one comes to us from Northstar. Later in the program, Northstar is going to be giving us the art of heavy lift, the lost art of heavy lift vehicles, although this week it's the temple of heavy lift vehicles.
Yeah.
Next week it'll be the Lost Crusade, or the last crusade of heavy lift vehicles.
Yeah, and then heavy vehicles
and then
the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, and then the incredible disappointment that is the Crystal Skulls of heavy lift vehicles.
Yeah.
But this is from Northstar. Dear Biff and Nos, you were wondering if KSP handles unloaded craft, those in map view, as individual parts or a single piece. The answer is quite definitely a single piece. Even if that's not entirely true, even that's not entirely true, as it simply records the position, orbit, and relevant parameters like mass, and if the craft has any parts that operate while unloaded, like certain ISRU equipment, or at least in mods. I've never actually used the stock ISRU yet, so I don't know if that operates while unloaded too. Do you have any idea what ISRU is?
No.
Okay.
The International Service of Reclaiming Units.
Or Unix.
Oh, yeah.
The International Service of Reclaiming Unix. Even though it doesn't spell like that. You know what, though? In the Latin alphabet, it starts with a Y.
Oh, yeah. The intellectual shuffle.
No, it starts with an I. I'm sorry.
Of reputable umpires.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Uncles. Reputable
uncles.
However, and this is getting to the second topic, remote tech places a heavy strain on your computer's processor by performing ray tracing between your command centers, relay satellites, and every possible craft that could require control, including the relay satellites themselves. Okay, so I wasn't crazy.
No.
That my satellite network was bogging the game down. Mm-hmm. The result is a massively complicated web of connections the game must calculate to determine line of sight between different satellites, control centers, and craft. The number of such connections increases exponentially with the number of craft you have not under local control. For instance, if you have 10 satellites, then the game has to calculate 900 connections just to see what satellites can see each other. This is not including whether they can see the KSC and other control centers or craft that need control, such as probes. The result is an immense strain on your CPU and is why I personally will never play with remote tech myself. My computer chugs as is just to handle the game with a single 1.1 gigahertz processor. Yeah, see, that's right there. That's why I want the multi-core 1.1, which is, when you've got a multi-core processor and it's only using one of them, that's a lot of horsepower that's just sitting in the stables.
Yeah.
Northstar says, may you always fly safe and find a star at true north to guide you home. And thank you. I was very curious about that.
Next up is from Etherin. Well, hello there, you crazy Kerbal cats. How are you on this fine day? I saw The Martian this week, and I think I might have to steal a couple ideas from the film. It never occurred to me to send a return vehicle to a planet or moon surface ahead of time to plan for future missions, and I feel like it should have. It makes sense. All it needs is enough seats to fit everyone in, enough life support to keep them alive for the return trip, and enough fuel to get off the surface and onto a return trajectory or into a rendezvous with the interplanetary mothership. You don't have to worry about weighing it down with science equipment or any of the surface operational gubbins. You don't have to worry about carrying enough fuel to get back up into orbit along with your lander, meaning that can be simpler too. Right now, in what I hope is a stable orbit of Jool, I have an over but beautifully designed space station that serves as a self-refueling service station and temporary lab space for any and all missions to the Jool system. With 4 well-designed RVs, I'm not really confident with lathe landings. I could drastically cut the cost of any future missions to that system. Oh, actually, I've already changed my mind. Have landing modules docked to the station in a low but high enough for safe but quick docking out of Kerbin. Have a station with interplanetary drive modules docked. Send mission modules up to dock with the drive modules at the station. Go to the destination, dock the drive section to the planetary station. Undock the mission module and dock it into the lander module. Go down, do the exploration thing. Come up, return the mission module to the refueled drive module. I'm making myself all excited about the possibilities. Imagine the bank balance after 100 missions to Jool, each at the cost of an lunar low Kerbin orbit flight. Oh my. I'm not much of a capitalist, but oh my.
Oh my.
I was going to tell you about my progress this week, but I think I've waffled enough, so I'll just tell you this. It was glorious. I'm getting really good at putting space stations together in orbit of alien worlds. The design I've been working with actually looks quite a lot like the Hermes, which kind of made me smile. May your potatoes not be grown in your own bodily waste, or your tender human bodies pierced by communications equipment. Ow. Homer to your mobile. It's Erin.
Infernal Robotics has a rotating hub on it.
Does it?
Yeah, and I haven't done it yet, but I do want to create a rotating ring on a ship.
Then you can blow up part of it and see how it would actually rotate.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
A reference to Interstellar. A callback to a classic. Okay, next letter comes to us from Lithobreaker. Hey guys, you asked for thoughts on 1.0.5, and since Zip has his hands full smoking Crispies, he didn't say that. He just said hands full. I threw some quick and possibly ill-considered ideas down for you. In brief, yay, we get an update with loads of new parts, new features, and bug fixes. Boo, loads of mods will break. Oh, that was the other thing. That was the other thing I was not pleased about.
Oh.
Was anytime they release an update, automatically, I have to wait for Kerbal Engineer to update. I have to wait for...
Oh, yeah. So it's better to get one big update than a bunch of little ones.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
I'm glad he brought that up, because that's something I meant to mention earlier, but I forgot to. But yeah, he's right. Anytime, you're going to have to wait for all your mods to update. Boo, loads of mods will break, and I'm betting that at least some modders will feel like, why fix it now when 1.1 is around the corner and I'll have to fix it up for Unity 5 and the new UI then? In a little more detail, totally looking forward to the thermal updates and the other bug fixes. They're going to be very welcome. The new parts could be fun, especially the cargo ramp. The contract stuff could be good, but I'm in a wait-and-see state on that since I'm not really planning a new career game anytime soon, unless they're too good to miss, of course. I think it will be popular with people who do play career, but hey, this is just 2 cents worth. On the whole, I think that it's good that they're putting out the bits that are complete, and if I played stock, I would be updating the second they released it. But as a player with a heavily modded install and no real plans to get the new contracts into play, I think I will be testing extensively and possibly waiting for 1.1. Homer to your mobile guys, Lithobreaker. P.S. Since you were commenting that you only got one non-audio letter last week, and since I, for one, love hearing you guys read out people's letters, I'm sending this one in as text. I appreciate that. We were earlier this week. We didn't have any letters.
Yeah.
At all. And I was starting to panic because usually by about Wednesday, we have letters trickling in. Mm-hmm. Generally, as soon as we release an episode, we start getting letters.
Yeah, we get a couple.
We weren't getting any.
Sometimes the year just get weirdly slow.
And I was starting to think, oh no, I mean, this is going to be like the shortest Kerbalcast on record.
Yeah.
Shorter than even the first episode. But then the letters started coming in. So I appreciate it, folks, when you write in letters. It's always good to have them. Next letter.
From Yavaris. Hi, Biff. I'm a new player about 2 weeks old and have only got to about episode 20 in the podcast archive, so apologies if I'm unaware of recent episodes.
He writes well for only being 2 weeks old.
Yeah. I first learned of KSP way back when it first came out, under early access, and as a space science lover, I knew it was the kind of game that I probably wouldn't stop playing, ever. But I bought it during a Steam sale and then miraculously managed to never touch the play button for like 2 years. Finally, after listening to The Martian and getting to see the movie last month at its premiere, I broke down and started it up. Dear God, I wish this game existed back when I was in school for aerospace engineering. If I had gotten addicted to Kerbal instead of WoW, my GPA might have turned out a little differently.
Yeah, it'd have been lower.
You wouldn't spend so much time running around to collect pelts.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Because if you present all your pelts to your aerospace engineer professor, he's not as impressed whenever you present your rendezvous. So,
what about killing boars in the forest? They're one point each.
Yeah. I started right in career mode, and I must say the contract system is good, but doesn't quite smooth the learning curve, as some contracts in particular just seem evil. The contract to test a parachute at conditions where they don't work comes to mind, and Bill paid the price for bringing us this information. Intrepid Jebediah also was the victim of my learning. He was piloting when I made my first stable orbit, at the cost of all the fuel in his tank. It took a week of practicing making rockets and orbits for positioning satellite contracts before I got the courage to try and send an unmanned capsule to rescue Jeb. It was listening to the podcast that contributed to me getting close enough for him to jet over first try. Oh, good job.
I'm surprised we actually helped somebody rendezvous.
Maybe it was somebody on the podcast. I'm not going to say we're going to take the credit for that. And a side note, in figuring out where to point the nose, it helps me think I'm trying to pull my prograde to the target node, which is the pink circle, and pushing the retrograde to the pink cross. With Jeb's successful rescue, I plucked 3 other stranded Kerbals from contracts and decided it was time to shoot for the Mun. After 2 flyby missions, Jeb heroically piloted his craft down to the surface for a safe landing. He happily switched on all the science experiments and environmental gauges and stepped outside for an EVA and planted the first Kerban flag on a terrestrial soil. Extraterrestrial soil. That means there's even more of it. Flush with excitement and the capsule brimming with science, Jeb returned to the cabin and flipped the switches for engine ignition for the trip home. That's when he glanced at the fuel gauge. There was maybe 10 seconds of thrust remaining, nowhere near enough to break Mun gravity. He throttled down quickly before getting too high and becoming a green smear on the lunar surface. After signaling mission control for his status, he grabbed a snack and settled in to await rescue once again. Anyway, saw your tweet asking for letters, so I thought I'd contribute with my newbie experience. My next goal is to send a rescue craft for Jeb, and eventually I'd love to recreate the Ares missions to Duna. But small steps. Rockets away, Yavarus.
Isn't that one of the deadly sins, Yavarus?
Yeah, when you just keep yabbing and yabbing on.
I thought that was good when you said extraterrestrial soil.
Yeah,
like terrestrial soil and then extra. So
yeah,
anyway, I'm over explaining. I did want to say when I made the crack about the GPA being lower, I meant because you'd be spending all your time playing the game. Not because it would. If you were taking like science and orbital classes, your GPA would be much higher.
Yeah,
but I could see myself as a student like failing all my classes. It's like, what did you do? I played Kerbal.
Yeah.
Can I submit my space station as a project? Can I get graded on that?
I don't know. I could see it being used in classes and stuff. Yeah. You know, like if the teacher was competent enough in Kerbal to show them, like, okay, so this is what it's really like to set up a, whatever.
I have a question for you.
What's that?
Are you ready for some velvety smooth?
Ooh, always.
Greetings, guys. Caffeine Rage here. Okay, show of hands. Who saw 1.0.5 coming? Well, unless you're driving or otherwise occupied. Show of hands. No? No one? Yeah, me neither. It was kind of a shock, especially just shortly after them saying that splitting 1.1 wouldn't save time, but this is actually a bit different than that. Just because they've said that this is the content that is done, essentially, except for the QA process, which has actually started already, and stuff that would work in Unity 4 that wouldn't require the Unity 5 update. But this is also making me a little bit worried for the 1.1 update. Just because that this, I want to call it an appetizer, but it feels more like an appeasement patch. That this is a, sorry we're taking so long, and the fact that they're putting out this patch now makes me wonder if we're going to be seeing the Unity 5 update sometime this year. It's a thought that I'm not enjoying having, but now that I've kind of thought about it after the past couple of days, it's starting to make a lot more sense. Don't get me wrong. I still am in the camp that that they should take their time with the Unity 5 update, that they need to get this right because the launch was a little bit iffy and there's still a lot of things that are a little bit strange with KSP before you add in all the oddities that bonding does. But it's feeling like they're having a little bit of feature creep with this update. Just going through the notes every week and hearing Max Maps talk about what they're doing on Squadcast, and this is beyond what I'm reporting about. Just little things here or there that I really can't fit in. It's making me think that there's going to be a lot of feature creep, and it's going to be cool. There's going to be a lot of interesting and neat things in this update. But I'm starting to think that we may not see this update this year, and that is something that I'm not sure if I enjoy. I'm hoping that my time frame is off, that all these little things that they're adding doesn't take as much time as they seem to be. I mean, just the KSpedia that I've reported on, the last 3 weeks is now done. So it just feels like there's just a lot of little things that they're doing beyond just the porting, which is required, of course. You can't just ship all the code into Unity 5 and have it done with, but it's just, there's so many things that they're adding in that, while interesting and necessary, makes me wonder if we're going to be seeing the update this year. And I'm really hoping I'm wrong on this. I really am. Boy, I'm really coming off negative on this news, aren't I? But don't get me wrong, I am excited to see the new content coming out. To see the contextual contracts firsthand, even though I have had that a bit in modding already. But to have that in the base game, it's going to make it so that contract packs will make it more accessible, that they'll have ready access to the contextual parts of the contract system, I should say. So I think that's going to really be adding to the game a lot more than people are probably giving credit to. And of course, the heating changes. Oh, it sounds like the heating bugs, the fixes for it, is going to be in this update. And I'm excited for that because I'm having things explode right off the launch pad. And no matter what I'm changing in my design, it's not working. And it's kind of frustrating coming back to KSP after taking a couple weeks off and having my rockets continuously blow up. So I'm hoping that fixes it. And I'm sorry that I've been a little bit negative on this patch, but I'm just calling it how I'm seeing it. I'd like to hear what you guys think. I'll catch you next time.
You know, it's funny that he's worried about sounding too negative. When he did that letter, obviously he didn't know that previous to us playing it, it was going to be me saying that I was kind of disappointed, and J. Arthur, and yeah. He didn't realize he was going to be one of several voices. Mm-hmm. He expressed very clearly kind of what I feel, which is, kind of that concern of, is this delaying, is 1.0.5 simply a delay of 1.1?
Yeah.
I don't know, this might be heresy to some people, but I mean, to me, if they devoted all their efforts simply into porting the game to Unity 5 and releasing it, I would be fine.
Yeah, because a question that does come up is, let's say they release 1.0.5. Well, I mean, they are going to.
Right.
So, they do that. They release it, and some of the things that they released now have problems. Mm-hmm. Would fixing those problems detract from the progression of 1.1?
Right.
Would it have been better to have done it all at once and then fix all of their problems? Because, I mean, they're putting that out there, and then they're changing the game anyway with 1.1.
Yeah. And Caffeine Rage made a good point. I mean, you can't just port the code to Unity 5. You can't do that. And I understand that. But I would rather have the how do I put this? I would rather have the processing, the Unity 5 aspect of the game addressed first, then give us all the new features and whatever. Mm-hmm. Again, I might be in the minority on that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm speaking from my experience, and my experience is, as a sandbox player, a lot of what they're talking about doesn't really impact my play style. Mm-hmm. What I'm mostly concerned about is allow me to use the horsepower of my system on the game, stabilize the game, and then worry about the additions.
Yeah. Yeah, I would rather have the game working better before having more things in it working.
Again, I'm going to toss this out to the listeners. I really want to hear what you think about this. I mean, you're hearing kind of a fairly negative point of view from most of the people that have been on the show so far. We may be the only ones saying this.
Yeah. I mean, it's only a couple voices so far.
I mean, the bulk of the community may be completely opposite.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear otherwise. I mean, if you agree with us, please let us know. If you disagree with us.
I mean, if you're the kind of player that you don't play often, but getting those new parts will tide you over till 1.1, I could see that definitely being a boon. Mm-hmm. So there's that.
Why do I have a feeling that Squad, every week when we release a new episode of Kerbalcast, they have a piñata party, and they put like our faces on the rear end of a donkey, and then just beat it with a big stick. Well, there's an image.
Yeah, there's an image.
Well, that wouldn't be the first time I've been called a donkey's rear end.
Yeah.
So. Again, thank you to Velvety Smooth. Good letter. Sounds like you're at least in line with us.
Yeah.
Let's move on. What's our next letter?
From Haywood Floyd. Howdy, Boffinness. Haywood Floyd at your service here. I haven't had the time lately to write in, and I sort of lost touch with KSB, particularly because of limited time, but also because I hadn't spent what little time was left with Microsoft Flight Simulator X and 10 and Oblivion. The latter I don't feel so bad about after hearing Caffeine Rage mention it along with Morrowind in his last letter.
Don't feel bad about the X.
Yeah.
I'm reading a history right now on the Tudors, King Henry VIII, and that sort of thing. And one of the characters it's like if I remember correctly, because it's been a while since he's popped up, but I think it's like Charles X. But they say Charles X.
Yeah.
And and it's like I'd be reading and I'd go, and Charles X.
Yeah, Charles Xavier.
Yeah, and then a couple of sentences later I'd go, oh, that's 10. Charles 10.
Yeah, it's not Professor X is in the
Oh, that's true. The medieval X-Men.
Yeah. Neither have I been curving since August, nor have I seen The Martian yet. Plus, I hardly kept up with the last 6 or 7 episodes, so I felt it was a perfect time to send in a letter of ignorance. So here are some random topics. The news section, Zip's Tips, is awesome. Count me in as your fan number 6, Zip. That spacebar tapping reminded me of my first few minutes in KSP. I downloaded the demo, saw myself as an expert at the time, of course. I've seen a rocket before. I even knew what the fumes typically come out. Plus, I've seen Apollo 13, so what could go wrong? I entered the VAB thinking, let me do this. After a few minutes, I managed to set up a liquid fuel tank in the center, an engine at the bottom, a decoupler plus a capsule at the top, 2 radial decouplers at each side, and finally 2 solid boosters, and finally some launch clamps. Easy. Next, I click some button and my rocket sits on the launch pad. Okay, now how do I launch this thing? I noticed the throttle at the bottom center, but had no idea how to start the engine. Clicking randomly around did not help, and so here's Zip's tip would have come in handy. A quick wiki search told me I have to press the spacebar, which I did. The left booster ignited and pulled the rocket somewhat up, but the launch clamps held tightly. I pressed the spacebar again. The second booster lit up. Now I had a trembling rocket, 2 boosters pulling desperately upwards, while the main engine did not stir at all. Another spacebar tap finally decoupled the boosters, which both flew off in some random direction, and the final spacebar tap released the launch clamps, and the rocket slowly fell sideways to the ground, and laughing tears, I bought the game right away.
Is the name of this letter The Importance of Sequencing?
By the way, following your request from some episode way back, I checked something. I bought the game on December 14th, 2014, and only made it to the MUN on January 18th, 2015. I think this makes me the slowest MUN explorer ever. Since J. Arthur is now communications manager of Kerbalcast, coordinating multiplayer efforts, it made me think of how it would be to play Artemis Bridge Simulator with the Kerbalcast crew. Maybe you've heard about this. It is like Star Trek with every player taking over one station. Have you heard of that?
Artemis? I have.
Yeah, I've actually.
It is cool.
I've actually played it. Have
you?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I played it at Gen Con. I had played it with some friends on just PCs before. And then I played it that was in preparation for the game that we were going to play at Gen Con, where they actually had a ship bridge set up.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, like I was originally the communications officer, which is an extremely boring, stupid job.
Hey, say it. Hailing frequencies open, Captain.
Yeah, you don't even get that. Like, there's someone for science, like the science officer, engineering. You have a pilot, weapons, communications, and then you have like your captain who doesn't have anything, but he has more screens than everyone else, so he can see everything that's happening, but he can't do anything. He has to tell everyone to do it.
Right.
Everyone else can just see what they can do. They can't see the other screens. So the captain doesn't, they just have to keep commanding people, and like, communications, like you sit there almost all the time. He's like, hail this ship, whenever most of the time it's just blow up that ship. Don't even hail it. Like unless things get desperate, the communications officer. So I was like bored.
Right.
But our captain wasn't really that great. So I called a mutiny.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, I call a mutiny. And because he didn't know half of what he was doing. And so like we all rose up and we like took him and shoved him in the communications chair, and I became captain.
I'm regretting asking you to be on the podcast now.
I don't like this way. Podcast mutiny. But yeah, so we held a mutiny, and we demoted the captain to communications, and I took over as captain, and we like barely survived like our time limit.
It's so bad. I just realized, what a Kerbalcast mutiny would boil down to? You and I would switch chairs.
Yeah. That would really be
I mean,
it.
that's literally it, is I would...
And honestly, you'd probably like take it. Just take the chair.
Here, you can have it.
Yeah. So
fine. Everyone blame Nos. Let him get all the abuse.
So, thinking about Artemis, I decided to take this further. I imagine Kerbalcast turning into a Star Trek scenario. The USS Launch Clamp is the newest and fastest ship in the Federation. It has those new digression drives. The longer the digressions, the faster it flies. Led by Captain Biff Aldrin, whose prime talent is his ability to absorb blame.
Yes.
It gathers the best team of highly trained professionals. First Lieutenant Nostromo, who will eventually get his own command of the USS Garbage. Amy Badger K is the reckless pilot. Freetoss, starred by Andy M., is the engineering officer. Caffeine Rage, as comms officer, is known to soothe even the most hostile alien race. And J. Arthur is the counselor. Oh, and Zip is the obnoxious pet that proliferates endlessly in one episode after fiddling with the transporter. Stay tuned for the first session. Episodes may be shown in random order for no reason. And this concludes my random thoughts. May you always have a steed to star by your center of lift. Haywood Floyd.
Okay, if J. Arthur is the counselor, does that mean he has to show cleavage?
Always, and has to wear a catsuit.
I'm confused about one thing, though. The digression drive.
Yeah.
The longer the digressions, the faster it flies. I would think the longer the digression, the slower it goes.
No, because time flies when you're digressing.
Oh, I thought it's like time slowed down.
Well, time flies for us. That's why we don't realize we're doing it so much.
Will they ever get to the point?
Yeah.
That is funny. I like that. That is so good. I like how Amy's new nickname is already taken.
Yeah.
I'm never going to live down the launch clamp thing.
No.
Never.
That's stuck.
Have you noticed, this may be me, have you noticed that it seems like every letter now makes a reference to a launch clamp?
Yeah, we've had a couple now.
Yeah. It's like the community as a whole got together and said, if we just keep repeating launch clamp, Biff will never forget it.
Just so my launch clamps are running out of fuel. And
my launch clamps are attached to my launch clamps.
Oh, my launch clamp lies over the ocean. My launch clamp lies over the sea. My launch... And the next letter belongs to you.
Bring back my launch clamps to me. You should actually be reading this one. This is Mike Dowling.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, Biff. Oh, this is interesting. He spells Biff, B, the number 1, I mean literally the number 1, FF. Nos is N05. And then, of course, spelled properly, Badger, Shrink, Chips, etc., etc. Mike here, back to playing KSP after a 4-month break and a new graphics card. That sounds familiar.
I know what that's like.
KSP 1.0 and its point releases have been a series of disappointments for me, with the game crashing every few minutes, bizarre explosions due to unpredictable and irrational heating issues, and a complete inability to get things to fly, even stock craft. I play KSP on Linux, and so far, I've always had a 64-bit platform for loading up plenty of mods. I regularly use over 100, good lord, which, to be fair, are often the source of some of my crashes. 100 mods.
Yeah.
That's hard to believe. Oh, we had a mic hit. That was a mic nudge.
Yeah.
I guess, you know what? The mic nudge is in honor of Mike Dowling.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I got stuck on 100 mods. Wow. A persistent issue that cropped up is a strange bug in the AMD graphics drivers on Linux that causes a complete freeze when reading certain types of PNG file, which took a heck of a lot of time to track down. Yeah, I wouldn't think that'd be the first thing you'd think of. Recently, I decided I'd had enough of that bug and bought a new NVIDIA card to replace my combination of AMD onboard and card. Suddenly, KSP is much more reliable, and I can load up Astronomer's Pack for truly beautiful planets. Mike, I have a question about Astronomer's Pack. The only version of it that I find shows that it's for 0.25. It's maybe I'm not looking in the right place, but it has. I'm assuming it's got to be upgraded to or does 0.25 run on what?
Maybe he's running 4 versions of it, and it adds up.
Nobody can see this but me. Nos is smiling. I mean,
I'm just so, like, I don't know.
You're laughing at me.
I have no idea about it.
You're laughing
Okay,
at
so
me.
the last time I updated was 0.25, and it's currently on 1.0, so maybe he's just running 4 versions of it.
Oh, wait a minute. He's on Linux.
Oh, it's faster. It's faster,
Anyway.
so he's probably only running 3 of them.
Nos is laughing at me. Anyway, maybe I'm not looking in the right place. But I was curious about that because every time I see it come up on Curse, it always shows it as version 0.25.
Yeah, so it's like way dated.
So for him to say that he's using it kind of surprises me.
Yeah.
But then again, that's not the first time Biff has done something like that.
If it's fully updated, are you going to get it?
Maybe. I'm looking to see if he mentions launch clamps in here somewhere.
Yeah.
See, the digression drive does slow time down. Okay, back to the letter. Loading up Astronomer's Pack for truly beautiful planets. I'm seeing similar improvements in several other Stream or Steam. It says Stream. I wonder if he means Steam. I'm seeing similar improvements in several other Stream games. I think that's Steam because he's got it capitalized. So I definitely recommend NVIDIA for anyone thinking of gaming on Linux. Are you looking?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm still having some problems with conflicting mods, though. I somehow ended up with a game that applied Mach effects around 70 meters per second. Oh, that's interesting. In which control surfaces didn't work. The Unity 5 upgrade I'm looking forward to most is the multi-threaded physics engine, though I'm not sure exactly how much benefit it will give us. I think it will give us a lot of benefit simply because it's going to offload a lot of the work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now, if I understand correctly, we've got one core literally doing it all. But the proposed 1.0.5 bug fixes are very promising in the meantime. One small comment I have on the Martian. Strictly speaking, he engineered the blank out of it, at least in the movie. Yeah, and even more in the book. Sorry for the rambling nature of this email. Maybe I'll do a properly scripted audio letter next time. May your boosters always point prograde. Mike Dowling. I think he meant Steam, but I'm not positive.
From Death Saber. Biff mentioned performance issues with remote tech, and that's completely normal given his age.
Well, as you get older, you know.
He didn't put that, but I didn't. I haven't played with remote tech for a while, but it still works the way it used to.
Can't take this abuse much longer.
This should still be relevant. In stock KSP, in map view, each satellite is one entity with a name and icon in orbit. KSP doesn't keep track of its mass or how many parts it has or whether it has power or not. An easy test of this is to load a craft that uses power for something or generates power, so long as the power is changing. Transmit science or use some power by some other means so that your power is somewhere in the middle of its capacity. Go back to the Space Center and time warp. When you load up that ship again, the power will still be exactly where you left it. However, with remote tech, the mod needs to keep track of what antennae are attached to the craft, where they are pointing, and whether it has power to operate them. In addition, it needs to find a path to connect any probes together into a network. This pathing, what probe is connected to what, changes all the time as probes go out of range of each other to get eclipsed by a planet or moon. I imagine this is where your major performance hit is coming from. As you increase time acceleration, the craft are moving faster and the communications channels have to reroute more and more frequently, thus taxing the one CPU thread KSP currently uses even more. Homer to your mobile, Death Saber.
That's exactly what Northstar was talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember when I said that my game was bogging down, what I would do is I would go to the relay station, the tracking station.
Yeah.
And I would go to a solar system view. I would scroll all the way out to where I could see all of the planets. I could see Kerbal and then all of the planets around it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would high speed time accelerate as fast as I could. And it's like, it would move and pause and move and pause. And it just, and it was just enough of a pause that it was slowing me down just enough to be irritating.
Mm-hmm.
And my assumption was that it was because, it was because of this comm network that I had. Because until I got past a certain, I keep throwing out the number 10. I'm just using kind of a round number. But I think once I got right around 10 comm satellites, that's kind of where everything bogged down. So I don't know if that's all remote tech or a combination of things, but I did notice that was kind of, once I got past a certain point, the game started to bog down. And when you're trying to create a transfer window and it's taking longer, because it takes a while anyway.
Yeah.
When it takes longer for that to happen, it can get a little irritating. One thing I did think was really neat about The Martian, and I didn't say anything. Part of me wanted to stand up in the theater and yell, "I know what that means." But in The Martian, when they made reference to, they were talking about Mars and they were talking about the Hohmann transfer window.
Mm-hmm.
I really wanted to go, I know what that means. I know what that means.
I have the answer.
I'm the smartest one here. Something I've never, ever been able to say.
Yeah.
Let's see. I've got the next letter, right?
Yeah. It's all yours.
Unknown Spaceman, who was in the Steam group, by the way. Not Steam group, Steam group too. Jay Arthur has been coordinating multiplayer games online. World of Warships, and they were playing Civ 5. And Unknown Spaceman was one of the participants.
Do we know who won that? Or is it still going on?
Oh, it was several. They did several. I dropped in and out a couple of times.
Yeah.
And when I dropped in the second time, they were on a totally different game.
Wow.
You know who I give major props to?
Who's that?
The Badger.
Really?
Well, they were doing, let me see if I can remember my times right. It was 9 o'clock. It was 9 p.m. Central Daylight Time when I was watching.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Amy, isn't it late for you? And she said, I think she said it was like 3:40, something like that. She was like, it was like 3:40 in the morning, something like that. But anyway, It was like middle of the night for her.
Wow.
So anyway, and she said she had to get up early and go play soccer or hockey or something. So. She has more stamina than I do. Let's see. Okay, Unknown Spaceman. Anyway, it was good to see him on the Kerbalcast multiplayer group. Greetings, Kerbonauts. Unknown Spaceman here with an update on the Kerbalcast United Station. After a few of the more ambitious additions to the station, high part count and low frame rates have made further construction a rather frustrating experience. Those with the patience are still more than welcome to add to the KUS, but for the rest of us, a new project has launched. Introducing the Kerbalcast Mooner United Nexus. KMUN is a state... KMUN, playing all the hits for your green-tinted lifestyle.
You're listening to KMUN, KMUN.
Orbiting your life in unexpected ways.
Yeah.
Raising your periapsis and making your apoapsis even sweeter. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, let's just go with it.
Good Lord. Maybe I'm smoking the Crispies. KMU. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Somebody's hammering.
Yeah.
Folks, you remember I mentioned that there's construction going on at my apartment complex? I don't know if you can hear this, but somebody's hammering somewhere. It's way off in the background. KMUN is a station core located in a 100-kilometer equatorial orbit around the Mun. Unlike the KUS core, the new Mooner hub has 4 senior, docking ports, so keep this in mind during your construction. Currently, the only living space is being provided by 2 observation cupolas. The station is powered exclusively by RTGs, so habitation or power generation modules may be a good place to start. I'm looking forward to watching this become another beautiful obnoxious monstrosity, much like Biff. He didn't say that. Until next time, fly fast and take chances. Unknown Spaceman.
Okay.
KMUN. Playing all the hits.
This next one comes from Northstar.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm not ready.
Okay. He starts off by saying, "Greetings, Kerbonauts."
No, you have to say it.
Northstar here with this week's The Temple of Heavy Lift Vehicles. Last week, I promised you guys we would begin discussing engine clusters and staging this week, and I don't intend to disappoint. Okay, first of all, engine clusters. Engine clusters are, as the name implies, simply a grouping of engines on a rocket, usually at the bottom of a stage.
I'm disappointed.
More importantly, heavy lift vehicles allow you to build the equivalent of a much more powerful engine out of several smaller rocket engines.
And as we did last time, we're dividing this up. So next section belongs to me. The best designs to work with, and often the easiest to imagine in the first place, are often those simply based on well-known geometrical shapes. Have 4 rocket engines, place them in a square. 3, a triangle. This all begs the question, though, how many engines do we need? That obviously depends on the size of your payload, first of all, and the pattern of your staging. However, the key thing with any rocket is always the thrust-to-weight ratio.
You see, bigger is better when it comes to rockets, at least in the aerodynamic terms. Larger objects inherently have higher ballistic coefficient, meaning they encounter relatively less air resistance compared to their mass, if they have the same shape and density as a smaller object they are being compared to. This is because they have relatively less surface area compared to smaller objects in accordance with the square-cube law. In practical terms, this means when designing a large rocket, you are often going to be hard-pressed to find enough surface area on the bottom to fit all the necessary thrust onto the rocket for its optimal ascent curve. This is where side-mounted boosters and more complex types of staging really shine. Topics we'll get to in future segments. May you always fly safe and find a star at true north to guide you home.
And remember, next week's episode will be Northstar and the Last Crusade of Heavy Lift Vehicles, followed by the incredibly disappointing Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
Hey, Nos.
Hey, what?
What time is it?
It's time for the tweets.
Tweets.
Time for the tweets. At Jen Julius, have you seen this? 10,000 images from the Apollo program. And then 2 hours later, I tweeted, these photos are out of this world. No, I won't apologize, because I didn't notice that he had already tweeted those out. So, you beat me to it, Jen Julius. You beat me to it.
You might want to explain how you spelled apologize.
Apollogize.
Get it? Apollo.
Apologize.
Apologize. Get it? Yeah, it wasn't worth it.
Christian, I want to go home and play KSP.
Me too.
At Soyuz Game, just finished the ISS on Kerbal Space Program. There's a Soyuz docked too. Max Maps, by the by, if you aren't following at Zed's TED for the nitty-gritty update news, you're messing up. Caffeine Rage, what? No comment about it on being Red October? At Kerbal Space Program. Yesterday, we received Unity Awards. Thank you, and vote for the Golden Joystick Awards. Hashtag KSP. White Lightning HQ. In case you missed it, here's our final Kerbal video featuring all 4 Kerbalnauts. Caffeine Rage. I've gotten the squad report down to a manageable size now. You'll no longer need to pack a lunch to get through it. J. Arthur. Slow day today. Only a very prudish couple who refuses to go past undies. Unknown Spaceman. Couldn't finish my audio letter to Kerbalcast without stammering, sputtering, and swearing halfway through. Enjoy the text letter, guys. And then some weird train of tweets that made no sense whatsoever that had everybody's names in it, and I don't know why I got involved.
I have a question.
What was that?
What was what?
That big, like it was a whole bunch of names. What was that nonsense? How did that start?
We got into, I think it was on Friday, we got into this just very bizarre discussion, and more people kept joining.
Yeah.
And somebody made the comment, they said, at some point, somebody's going to ask to be dropped out of this conversation, which way back when, Casper Vid, somehow or the other got sucked into one of our nonsense tweet conversations.
Yeah.
And he finally chimed in and said, could you guys please remove me from this?
Yeah.
You know, my Twitter is just blowing up here. To which I said, hey, let's put Casper Vid in.
Yeah.
So we added him. Well, he got very smart on us because then he immediately added a whole bunch of other people to where we no longer had any room to write anything.
There you go.
So he brought it to a screeching halt.
I'm going to check my Twitter, and all of a sudden I had like like 20-something notifications.
I know.
It was ridiculous. I was like, what is this?
Well,
Dude.
I was at work.
Yeah.
And it's like I'd check Twitter, and it's like I'd go through, okay, whatever, funny, ha ha ha. And then I'd go off and do something, and 10 minutes later I'd go in and look at Twitter, and it'd be like, 25 plus tweets, and it'd be like, what?
Yeah.
And most of them were like, badger, mushroom, badger. And, and it's like, okay, so I'd go through and I'd clear them all, and then I'd go off and do something. 10 minutes later it'd be, 30 plus tweets. What?
Yeah.
So anyway, I wondered, because you put together the tweets every week, and I thought, oh, he is going to have so much trouble.
Yeah, I was like, how am I going to construct this? I'll call for the nonsense it is.
Well, that's true. Well, I have another question.
What is that?
What time isn't it?
It's not time for the tweets.
Tweets.
Not time for the tweets.
Final stage expended.
If you're having trouble in KSP, we've got some help headed your way with Zips Tips.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Zips Tips, continuing the series where I share my experience and knowledge. This week has been a reminder to me that in spite of my great skill and all the time I've spent flying ships around the system, even I still learn new things from time to time. So for this tip, I present you with a lesson as I had to learn the hard way so that you don't have to. This is something that was never mentioned in flight school or in astronaut training. It's a secret that Big Pharma don't want you to... Oh, sorry, wrong script. So, Zips tip number 2. Never let a badger loose on a space station. If you have any questions about this week's tip, or any previous tip, just drop Litho a line and he'll pass them on to me. Likewise, if there's anything you'd like me to cover, get in touch. Right, see you next week with another useful tip.
If a badger does get loose on your station, just hit the space bar.
Yeah. So far, I'm just putting together the two things I've learned, and, that's what you do.
Badgers and space bars.
Yeah. If you see a badger, hit a space bar. If you don't see one, hit the space bar, because that's all you really got.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
Are badgers afraid of mushrooms and snakes, or are mushrooms or snakes?
I don't know. I mean, because according to a different video, badgers just don't care. So,
They don't care about snakes?
No, like honey. I don't guess it's the difference between a badger and a honey badger, but
a hunting badger,
honey badger.
Oh, honey badger.
That's another thing you don't know about. I'll have to show you that here in a moment.
A hunting badger?
No, I'll show you later.
Okay.
Actually, you know what? Pause it right now.
Pause what right now?
Pause the podcast.
Pause the podcast?
Yeah, we'll get right back to it.
This is the honey badger.
That is the most bizarre thing. Where did you find that?
Internet. Like, the internet happens.
Yeah, but, I mean, when you log onto the internet, things don't just come flying out of the screen. What were you were searching for honey, weren't you?
I'm a hungry little badger.
Yeah, apparently.
Searching for some gross larva.
The things I learned.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things about badgers on the internet there.
Well, let's see what J. Arthur can teach us with Kerbal 101.
Yeah.
This week, as Sinatra Kerman previously pointed out, we'll be flying to the Mun. In today's lesson, I'll be discussing how to get to the Mun, landing there, and returning. This journey will focus on sending a Kerbal simply to plant a flag. However, it can be adapted to any other lunar mission that you need to get underway. Before we get started on craft construction, there's a few things we need to know about the Mun. Assuming you've never been there before, it's a very different place than Kerbin. There's no atmosphere, so you have to land 100% on rocket power. The gravity is lower than Kerbin, but still high enough to give you some trouble if you don't have adequate craft control. The terrain is very hilly. While there are some flat spots, finding one without prior experience is tough. Be prepared to attempt your landing a few times. I'll provide a craft file for you to use if you're a true beginner, but for the slightly more experienced, I'll just go over a few construction tips. The first thing you need to remember, use at least 4 landing legs. This gives your craft a much more even weight distribution when touching down, so you minimize your chances of falling over. It is possible to use more landing legs, but they aren't needed unless you're landing something very heavy. The second thing you need to ensure is that you have a wide enough stance for landing. Putting fuel tanks on your landing stage in quad symmetry around your engine should be wide enough for a basic lander. Again, this is to give you landing stability so you don't fall over when touching down. The third tip is to make sure you have adequate control that doesn't rely on your engine. This can be RCS, reaction wheels, or both. Just make sure that you have some other method of control other than relying on thrust vectoring from your main engine and your command pod's internal reaction wheels. Again, this is related to stability. If you land and start to tip over, the extra control method will save you from falling down. The final general tip is to ensure you have a high enough thrust-to-weight ratio on your landing stage. There's nothing worse than coming in for a landing and realizing you can't slow down. Even though the Mun has lower gravity than Kerbin, it still can easily yank you down fast enough to cause rapid, unplanned disassembly. Now that the basic tips are out of the way, let's get cracking. The first thing you need to do is get into orbit of Kerbin. If you follow my launch profile tips from a couple of lessons back, you can achieve this quite easily. It will help though if you can keep yourself as close to an equatorial orbit as possible. The Mun is on the exact same orbital plane as Kerbin, meaning that if you keep an equatorial orbit, you only have to burn prograde to get an encounter. The next step is to make your transfer burn. There's a couple of ways to do this. Assuming you kept an equatorial orbit, you can just burn prograde. Watch the map view, and as soon as your orbital path crosses the Mun, kill your engines and wait. Eventually, you will get an encounter with the Mun. It's not pretty or precise, but it gets the job done. The second rule of thumb way to do it is burn at Munrise. Point your craft prograde and wait for the Mun to rise over Kerbin in the same way the sun does. As soon as that happens, burn prograde until your orbital path crosses the Mun's. Again, you need to be in a mostly equatorial orbit for this to work. If done properly though, you should be captured by the Mun on your first pass. The third way to do it, which is the way that I use, is to create yourself a maneuver node. Go to map view and click on the Mun. The contextual menu should appear, and you want to click on Set as Target. Now, on your orbit, you should see two little tick marks appear with the capital letters AN and DN. Those stand for Ascending Node and Descending Node. While less important with the Mun, since again it's in your same orbital plane, these 2 points are where your orbit intersects the orbit of the thing you just targeted. Any maneuvers you make should go on one of these 2 points. While it can make a difference depending on what type of maneuver you want to make, in the case of the Mun, it doesn't really matter. So next, put your maneuver node on either the ascending or descending node. Then create your maneuver by dragging prograde until you see your Mun encounter appear on the map view. You can tweak it as much as you'd like to fine-tune it, but in order to save yourself delta V, you want to pass in front of the Mun as close to 10 kilometers as possible to maximize the effect of your gravity braking. Which we may explain better in the future, but old What's-His-Face covered this before in Flight Fundamentals. It really doesn't matter which method you go with, all of them are going to require you to spend roughly 850 meters per second of delta V to accomplish from a low Kerbin orbit. Whatever method you use to actually reach the Mun though, your next step is to decide whether to circularize or not. It really comes down to how picky you want to be with a landing site, as creating an orbit gives you time to scope out what you think would be the best place to land. I would suggest landing in the daylight, as that makes things much easier for you. Picking your landing zone can be tricky. Much of the Mun is full of craters, hills, and near mountainous terrain. One good place to look at when you're unfamiliar with the Mun's surface is craters. Typically, ground around the mouth of the crater is fairly flat, as are the bottoms of the crater. While it's not always true, these are good first landing sites for the inexperienced. The next thing, of course, is to land. Your first extra Kerbin landing can be difficult, as not having a parachute means you must control the entire descent. The most efficient way to land is to do what's called a suicide burn. Essentially, you wait till the very last possible second, go full throttle, and burn at full throttle until you touch the ground. I don't recommend doing this to anyone who is a less experienced player. Even I don't like having to do it. The next best way to land, which is probably the safest, is to come straight down. Point your craft retrograde and watch the map view. As soon as you're above where you want to touch down, start burning until your trajectory becomes completely vertical. You can see this on the nav ball as well. When the retrograde marker lines up with the top of the nav ball, you've killed all vertical speed. Next, just let your craft be pulled down by gravity. When you hit roughly 10 kilometers, start burning retrograde again. Get your velocity to under 200 meters per second and never let it go higher again. A quick note about the surface of the Mun. Your altimeter lies to you. The actual ground height ranges from between negative 200 meters to 8,000 meters, with an average surface height of around 3,000 meters. Pay close attention to ground scatter. If you start to see rocks popping up, it's time to slam on the brakes. Anyway, when your altitude dips below 8,000 meters, lower your velocity to less than 100 meters per second. Continue to drop it by roughly 20 meters per second for every 1,000 meters you drop. When you see the ground scatter appear, or if you can see your own shadow, it's time to start slowing down. Your landing velocity needs to be 12 meters per second or less. While you can survive a harder landing than that in the Mun's lower gravity, the slower you go, the less likely you are to bounce. After you touch the ground, or immediately before, kill your engines. If you keep burning, you're likely to take off again. Finally, make sure that you don't topple over. SAS will greatly assist you in not pushing your reaction wheels or RCS too hard, while ensuring you don't fall over. As long as you didn't fall over, congratulations, you made it to the Mun. Plant a flag and rest your weary head. You did it. Oh, what's that? You want to come back? Well, that's easy. Launch your craft and head due east to circularize your orbit like you would for launching at Kerbin. Set up a maneuver node that takes you out of the Mun's sphere of influence and adjust it to bring you as close to Kerbin as you can. Obviously, you don't want to litho brake, but a good 40 to 50 kilometer orbit should ensure that you don't burn up and get to land in just a couple of passes around Kerbin. Well, that about wraps it up for this Mun-tastic tutorial. Next time on Kerbal 101, we'll talk about construction in the VAB and SPH. Can't forget one of the biggest basics. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at JMA4707. You can come check out my Twitch streams at twitch.tv/jarthur4707, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Gaming Psychologist. Until next time, J. Arthur, signing off.
All right, that was J. Arthur, and thank you very much. I'm glad he did that topic. Getting to the MUN, that was one of my early indications of how big of a learning curve Kerbal had.
Yeah, and that's really the thing that kind of kickstarts. I think it's like the fork in the road for, is this game for me?
Yeah.
Because once you hit the MUN, you're like, oh man, I want to do everything else.
Yeah.
And other people, like, once they hit the MUN, they're like, okay, well, that's it. I don't know if I could handle doing anything else.
That was early on. I think that was one of my first experiences with, you can't just point at something and go there.
Yeah.
You have to intercept it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a whole different kind of game. So anyway, I'm glad he did that. Although I will say, after you showing me the honey badger video on YouTube, it was a little disappointing.
Oh.
It was a little bit of a letdown.
Oh, yeah.
So,
we set that bar.
So, J. Arthur, I'm sorry, but you didn't live up to the honey badger video. We are now joined by Freetoss and Solar System Science, and I will say this, make sure you've got your sunscreen on.
Greetings, Kerbonauts. Freetoss here with Solar System Science. The first destination on our grand tour of the solar system is its center, the Sun. Stars are hugely complex objects, so I'm going to try and stick with the basics. I'm not actually an expert on all this stuff after all. The Sun is what's known as a yellow dwarf star due to its size and luminosity. It has a mass 330,000 times more than that of the Earth, and has a radius 109 times that of the Earth. As I mentioned last week, the Sun and all stars are giant balls of plasma that fuse hydrogen into helium. But how does this process work? Hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, consists of a single positively charged proton and one negatively charged electron. On Earth, hydrogen is usually found in its molecular form, where two hydrogen atoms share their electrons, forming H2 gas. Inside the Sun, however, temperatures are so hot that the electrons that orbit the protons in hydrogen atoms get stripped away, leaving just the bare proton, forming hydrogen plasma. We can heat hydrogen up hot enough to form plasma in reactors here on Earth. If two protons approach each other, there is a force of repulsion, pushing the two apart, since both particles are positively charged. Similar to trying to push the north ends of two magnets together, they will repel. But in the Sun, the particles are moving so fast because it's so hot, and are under so much pressure that they have enough energy to overcome the electrostatic repulsion. The two protons get close enough for the strong nuclear force to bind the two together. The strong nuclear force can overcome the electrostatic repulsion, but only under very short distance. This causes the two protons to fuse together. This releases a tremendous amount of energy in the form of heat and light. Turning hydrogen into fully formed helium-4 takes several reactions that I won't discuss. The important thing to take away is that 3/4 of the Sun's mass is hydrogen, which is being fused into helium, which takes up most of the last quarter. This fusion can only occur because the Sun's core is very hot and under huge pressures. It's this fusion that produces the heat and light we feel and see here on Earth. This is the process that dictates the Sun's life cycle as well. Currently, the Sun is very stable midway through its life. There is a balance between gravity, which is trying to crush the Sun, and the outward pressure generated by the compressed gas and fusion occurring inside of it. These two opposing forces keep the Sun the same size and stable. In about 4 billion years, however, the Sun will begin to run out of hydrogen to fuse, and will instead begin to fuse helium into even heavier elements. This reaction will give off more energy, causing the Sun's internal pressure to start to win against gravity. At this stage, the Sun will swell into a red giant star. It will become larger and hotter, and even swallow up Mercury, Venus, and perhaps the Earth. Helium fusion is unsustainable, however. Gravity will start to win again, and the sun will start to collapse, which will increase its internal pressure enough to increase further fusion. Effectively, the sun will begin to pulse, swelling and shrinking, spewing material out into space each time it begins to grow again, and losing energy with each pulse. Eventually, what will be left of the sun is just its core, a white dwarf, surrounded by the material that the sun ejected, a new nebula. Now that we know the basics of how the sun gets its energy and the sun's life cycle, I'll talk a little bit next week about the sun's structure. If you have any questions about the sun or KSP, send me a tweet at Freetoss7. I'll talk to you again next week. Homebrew your mobile.
Okay, but this does raise the question, how often do red suns occur, and how come the Kryptonians haven't really found out that yellow suns did what they did until Kal-El?
Just had to make a Superman reference.
Like seriously, they didn't know that? Like, all the planets they colonized, they hadn't encountered yellow sun, nothing but red suns. They're not like, why don't we just live on yellow sun planets and just be, like, great?
Well, maybe they didn't know.
That's why I want to know how frequent they are. How frequent are red suns? Answer me that one, huh?
Which Superman are we talking about? Which version, huh?
I don't know. I'll take any of them. They all have that.
Christopher Reeve, Brandon Routh, huh?
No, let's do Cavill.
Henry Cavill.
He's a dreamboat.
He's dreamy.
He's dreamy.
Freetoss, thank you so much. I'm curious. I don't know if he's how he's planning this, but I wonder if he's going to work his way out. Like when he's done with the sun, if he'll go, next step will be Mercury and then Venus, and just keep working his way out. I don't know. For all I know, he'll jump and do something completely different.
Yeah.
So, but it's neat. I enjoy that. That's the kind of stuff that just really. It's not strictly Kerbal related, but it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So anything space related is fascinating to me, which should be obvious by now.
Yeah.
Who knows? Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Folks, this is Kerbalcast episode 70, A Walk in the Space Park, and credit given where credit is due, White Lightning HQ. That is a quote from their latest Kerbal video. Check it out on YouTube. It is absolutely hilarious, as is everything else. We want to thank our listeners, our regular contributors, folks who send in audio letters, text letters, regular features. Big thanks to Caffeine Rage. Big thanks to Jay Arthur, to Freetoss, to Litho Breaker. They put a lot of time in, and we certainly do appreciate it.
We want to thank the subreddit moderators for Kerbal Space Program and Kerbal Academy. And episode music comes to us from Professor Soap. Look for him on Facebook or at profsoaplive.com.
And a big thank you to Ascalon, posting episodes of Kerbalcast to YouTube each week. You can get in touch with us, kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us for incredible amounts of nonsense on Twitter at Kerbalcast.
You can subscribe to us on iTunes, and all episodes of Kerbalcast can be found at kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com. If you'd like to support Kerbalcast, you can donate on patreon.com/Kerbalcast.
And remember, next week, Nos will be out, but the Space Badger, the British Badger herself, our CSB, I'm going to have to get used to saying that, our Command Space Badger, will be along for episode 71 of Kerbalcast. Following that episode, we are going to do, after the credits, The Martian Revisited, and we're going to talk more about The Martian. So if you have opinions or comments that you would like to have for part of that segment, please send them in. Again, it's kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. Until then, I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot, Biff Aldrin, CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
Until next time,
Happy Kerbaling.